This is the FPL Draft Zone, your fantasy team's best signing of the season.
It turns out Bournemouth are not that good, so was it a mistake to fill our team with their players? Brentford lose at Arsenal, but are they the pick of the teams in Gameweek 29? And should Spurs attackers be on all our radars? Hello and welcome to the FPL Draft Zone, a podcast all about Draft FPL, the king of all fantasy Premier League formats. I'm Dom Crofts, I hope you're well, and today we're looking back at Game Week 28 with 2 games left to play, as those that bet big on double game weekers are feeling pretty low right about now. We'll also be looking ahead to Game Week 29 with 4 fixtures and 8 teams in action and working out which players might be worth bringing in, and we'll be taking a slightly more long-term view as a host of players likely to be on your waivers raise their hands in the air and invite you to sign them. But before that, let's take a look at the results from Game Week 28 so far with 2 fixtures left to play, and it all began on Saturday lunchtime when Manchester United beat Everton 2-0 at Old Trafford. 2 penalties for United, one from Bruno Fernandes and one from Marcus Rashford securing the points, but it could have been a different story if the Toffees had anyone, literally anyone, who could finish. At the Vitality Stadium, it finished Bournemouth 2, Sheffield United 2. Solanke owners in the mud after a missed penalty and a disallowed goal, but almost all draft managers also in the mud the minute Sheffield United scored, because what seemed like a nailed-on clean sheet for the hosts evaporated before our very eyes after just 27 minutes. At Selhurst Park, it finished Crystal Palace 1, Luton Town 1, Mateta with the opener for the Eagles before Curtis Woodrow equalised late on for Luton. Wolves beat Fulham 2-1 at Molineux. Wolves bouncing back from that defeat at Newcastle in Game Week 27 with a goal from Nori, but Pedro Neto and Bellegarde both forced off injured for the hosts in that one. And then in the late kickoff at the Emirates Stadium, it finished Arsenal 2, Brentford 1, Kai Havertz making it 4 goals in 4 games. Arsenal making it 8 wins on the spin ahead of their next league game with Manchester City. Then on the Sunday, it all started with a bit of a shock result really at Villa Park. Aston Villa 0, Spurs 4. Brennan Johnson and Timo Werner both on the score sheet for Spurs. Both are potential options on the waivers for Game Week 29. We'll be discussing them a little bit later. Brighton beat Nottingham Forest 1-0, an uninspiring game really, decided by an own goal. Brighton ended the game with an XG of just 0.46. Forest ended the game with an XG of just 0.68. That is the 3rd lowest total of any Premier League match this season. West Ham 2, Burnley 2 at the London Stadium. Burnley led 2-0 in this one, but a late Danny Ings goal rescued a point for the Hammers. And then the big one, Liverpool 1, Manchester City 1. John Stones opening the scoring for City before an Alexis McAllister penalty earned a point for Liverpool. So 9 of the 11 fixtures from Game Week 28 are now done and dusted. But who has come out of the weekend smelling of roses? And who has come out of it smelling of feces? It's time for winners and losers.
The FPL Draft Zone, winners and losers.
Our first winner this week is Declan Rice, one of many Arsenal players in a fine moment right now. Rice is absolutely thriving in this left 8 role he's occupying for the Gunners. He's now got returns of 17 points, 3 points, 6 points, 8 points and 9 points in his last 5 game weeks, giving him a total of 43 points over that period. He's got 6 goals for the season. He's picked up 5 assists as well, and during the course of the campaign, he's also earned himself 13 bonus points as well. Finding a route into that Arsenal midfield is not easy if you're a draft manager. The likes of Saka and Odegaard and Martinelli would have been locked into teams from day one. But Declan Rice, a bit like Rodri at Manchester City, will have been available for long periods during the course of this season. And if you managed to pick him up before this good run, well done to you. You deserve a big, fat, hairy pat on the back. Another winner this week is Ryan Aitnori. Aitnori has threatened attacking returns all season long, but it wasn't until game week 23 that he picked up his first assist. He followed that up with a 12-point return against Sheffield United in game week 26. And then this weekend, he picked up his first goal of the season. He got a 10-point return as well as Wolves beat Fulham. Wolves are turning into one of the stories of the season right now. Gary O'Neill has turned them from relegation candidates into a side that are currently only 6 points off 6th place. Now, no one is talking about it, but that means they are in the mix for a European place. And that's despite the fact that they've missed Neto, they've missed Cunha, and they've missed Hee-Chan for large spells of the season with both injuries and international commitments. Wolves take on Arsenal, they take on Liverpool, they take on Manchester City as well in 3 of their last 5 games this season. So they will have a huge say in who does go on to win the title. But before that, their fixtures are very nice indeed. They have Burnley, West Ham and Forest in 3 of their next 4. And you certainly would not bet against someone like Aitnori causing more problems for those teams when those fixtures come around. And finally for our winners today, Alejandro Garnacho. He deserves a shout out too. The Argentina player has had a breakout season for United this year. He picked up 2 more assists against Everton to take his tally to 5 goals and 5 assists for the season so far. He's looked particularly good when he's been playing alongside Rasmus Højlund, who is expected to return to the United starting 11 after the international break. United still look pretty unconvincing overall. Their fixtures are not great going forward either. But if you fancy them to somehow find a moment in this season where they look anything other than inadequate and you want a bit of United offensive coverage, then Garnacho is the most available of all their forwards and he could still be an option in your draft leagues. As for the losers from Game Week 28, I have some news for you guys and you're not going to like it, but we're friends. I'm going to tell you. The biggest losers of this game week are us if we went big with Bournemouth assets. There is still time for them to prove us wrong, but right now, if you wavered in Bournemouth defenders, and I hold my hands up here, I wavered in 3 of them, you're looking at something like this. Zabani, 1 point. Smith, 0 points. Kirkes, 0 points. Chris Mepham, 0 points. Even if you had Dom Solanke up front, a hero of the season so far, 0 points. An absolute disaster for draft managers. I genuinely thought they would beat Sheffield United comfortably. I thought they would get a clean sheet in the process as well, but it was not to be. And what that means is that it is now all on that home game against Luton Town on Wednesday to save their game week and to save our game week too. Who knew that relying on a team with 1 win in their last 9 games was a little bit ambitious? It is looking like a big mistake from us all, isn't it? But there is still time for Bournemouth to prove us wrong, and we will all know more after that game against Luton on Wednesday. So keep the faith. I'm keeping the faith. We've got to keep the faith. Hopefully we will still be rewarded for that faith. But against the Luton team that have scored at least once in each of their last 15 league games, let's just say I am not confident. Other losers this week, Everton attackers. The Toffees had 23 shots against Manchester United. They had an XG of 1.48, but they just cannot score goals. Beto and Decore were both subbed after an hour at Old Trafford. Calvert-Lewin had a good chance in the second half, but couldn't quite latch onto a cross. They've only scored now more than 1 goal in a game once in their last 11 games. This is not a good statistic. The good news for draft managers, though, is that they are in a relegation battle, and that means they will have something to play for in every game for the foreseeable future. They are not about to switch off and head to the beach, and that's a good thing for us if we are looking to invest in them. They have Bournemouth and Burnley in 2 of their next 3 games. They also play Forest, Brentford, Luton, and Sheffield United in 4 of their final 9 games. So the fixtures are incredibly favourable for Everton. They just need to become much, much more clinical. Now, what I would say is that in December, the same thing was being said about Arsenal. They dominated games against Aston Villa and West Ham. They did not score goals. Everyone was talking about Ivan Toney. Everyone was saying that Arsenal can't score goals. They desperately need this striker to turn their fortunes around. And now they cannot stop scoring. So it is not impossible that Everton will follow in Arsenal's footsteps. They are creating chances, and that is a good thing. But right now, if you have the likes of DCL or Decore in your team, they are frustrating owns. And this weekend was another frustrating weekend, and one to forget. So those are some of the winners and some of the losers from Game Week 28. But of course, what we need to do now is find out who the biggest winner of all is. Yes, it is time to reveal our fantasy hero of the week.
Hero of the Week.
And this week's fantasy hero of the week is King Kai Havertz, who made it 4 goals in 4 games, having scored the winner against Brentford. He's also got 2 assists in those games as well. In fact, over the last 4 game weeks, he's picked up a frankly astonishing 47 points. And the truth is, it could and probably should have been more as well. He missed a one-on-one chance in that win over Brentford. He's missed other opportunities in recent games as well. He seems to have played in pretty much every role imaginable this season for club and country. I remember he played at left-back for Germany at one point. He's played at left-8 for Arsenal. He's played up top for Arsenal. But now this false 9 role for the Gunners seems to be bringing the best out of him. And if you got Havertz into your team at the right time, may I say, you are laughing all the way to the bank. Annoyingly, though, I drafted him on draft night. I stayed loyal to Kai Havertz until game week 23. In fact, the point I decided to ditch him, his highest weekly return all season had been 7 points. And since I dumped him, he has picked up 4 points, 3 points, 12 points, 14 points, 14 points, and 7 points. But on a serious note, Mikel Arteta has shown at City and Arsenal now that he knows how to get the best out of his players, whether it be a Sterling, a Saka, or a Havertz. So, top tip, okay? If Arsenal spend £65 million on another questionable player next season, don't question it, just draft it. Kai Havertz is our fantasy hero of the week.
Hero of the Week.
Okay, time now to focus on Game Week 29, which features just 4 fixtures and 8 teams in action. Lots of you will have already begun planning for that game week already. And if you're in a head-to-head league, you will now have an even better idea of how many players your rival has got going into that game week. So the approach we're going to take here is to assume that you're pretty much set with your squad and you're looking to make maybe 1, 2, possibly 3 changes between now and the start of that game week. So we are going to work out where the best value lies in terms of goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders and attackers. A reminder of the fixtures that are taking place next weekend. Burnley take on Brentford at Turf Moor. Luton entertain Nottingham Forest at Kenilworth Road. Fulham do battle with Spurs at Craven Cottage. And West Ham United take on Aston Villa at the London Stadium. Not the most inspiring set of games, but there will be players available on the waivers that could just help your team. So let's get going with Waiver Wants.
The FPL Draft Zone. Waiver Wants.
So, as I mentioned, we are going to take things position by position this week, and that means we're going to start with a focus on goalkeepers. Clean sheets have not been easy to come by this season. I think we can all agree on that. But looking at the 4 fixtures that are taking place in Game Week 29, for me, the standout goalkeeping choice has to be Mark Flecken of Brentford. Brentford played pretty well against Arsenal, I thought. They defended doggedly, and they play a Burnley team who have scored just 2 goals in their last 4 games, and both of them came this weekend against West Ham United. Now, Brentford will go into that game knowing that it's a bit of a 6-pointer for them because they are now currently only 5 points clear of the drop zone. But I think they'll go to Turf Moor, and I think they will win pretty comfortably. Their last clean sheet came in game week 24 when they won at Molineux against Wolves. They've only had 4 clean sheets all season, but one of those clean sheets was in a 3-0 home win over Burnley. And I think in terms of clean sheet chances, Brentford really do represent your best bet in game week 29. Now, if Flecken is taken in your draft league, and assuming that the likes of Vicario and Martinez and Leno are taken too, just have a little look to see if Matt Seltz is available. Nottingham Forest travel to free-scoring Luton in game week 29, so it's unlikely he's going to keep a clean sheet. But if you think that an appearance point or two could make the difference to your game week, could be the difference between a win and a loss, then it might be worth getting him in for 1 week only. In terms of defenders, I know I'm repeating myself, but I do think Brentford represent our best chance of a clean sheet in game week 29. However, if you wanted to spread the risk a little, there is likely to be some West Ham coverage available on the waivers. They play at home to Aston Villa. My worry there is West Ham's performance against Burnley. They also play on Thursday night. They come up against a Villa side who will be determined to bounce back from that shock 4-0 home defeat to Spurs. Villa, of course, also play on Thursday night, so there could be rotation for both teams potentially, although I expect them to go strong. Luton's home game against Nottingham Forest is not the worst fixture in the world, so there is a chance that the home side could pick up a rare clean sheet there too. However, Luton have got a host of injury problems right now, so the likes of Burke or Mengi or Kabore could be your best bet if you want to place your faith in the Hatters. All 3 of them are likely to be available in most draft leagues. I can't really see much clean sheet potential in the Fulham v Spurs games. I think there'll be goals at both ends. So if you're looking for an offensive option, Anthony Robinson has shown good attacking output this season for Fulham. He's got 5 assists so far. And as we all know, Spurs do give their opponents a chance, so he could be worth thinking about as well. And the likes of Van der Ven and Romero could still be free in your league given Spurs' inconsistent defensive performances. So if you think Spurs can pick up a clean sheet of their own, they could be worth looking into too. Van der Ven, of course, did limp off injured in that win over Aston Villa, so keep an eye on press conferences for an update on him. On to midfield, and Brian Mbeumo is expected to return to the Brentford team sooner rather than later, so if he is still available on the waivers in your league, he's not just a good pickup for game week 29, but he's actually a good pickup from now until the end of the season. Keane Lewis Potter started in place of the injured Sergio Reguilon against Arsenal, so keep an eye on any injury updates there before rolling the dice on him, but he certainly could be a decent option against Burnley if he gets the nod. Christian Norgard picked up a knock against the Gunners and was replaced by Matthias Jensen, so he could be a good 1 week punt if Norgard doesn't recover. Jensen has 3 goals and 4 assists for the season so far. That actually makes him Brentford's 3rd highest point scorer, and even though that's not that impressive, remember, it's Burnley in game week 29. Tahith Chong and Jordan Clark both started in midfield for Luton at the weekend as they got a point at Crystal Palace. They're both likely to be available on your waivers. Chong has 2 goals and 2 assists this season. Clark is yet to return, but he has had extremely limited game time. I personally wouldn't bother with either, but Andros Townsend is an interesting option. He came off the bench against Palace and set up the equaliser. He's got 1 goal and 4 assists now, so keep an eye on Rob Edwards' press conference for any clues that Townsend might have earned a start. If he has, then he might be worth a gamble. Other midfielders worth thinking about for 1 week only. Nicholas Dominguez of Nottingham Forest. He's started the last 9 games now for them. He's picked up a goal and 2 assists in that time. Callum Hudson-Odoi of Forest has had a couple of big returns recently as well. Anthony Elanga has been one of their more consistent performers. Unfortunately, both Hudson-Odoi and Elanga were both dropped at the weekend, so there's no guarantee that they will start in game week 29. Alex Iwobi of Fulham has scored 2 goals in his last 3 matches now, having returned from AFCON duty with Nigeria. He's up against Spurs next, and as a former Arsenal player, I am sure he would love to keep his scoring run going there. Brennan Johnson earned a start against Villa this weekend for Spurs after getting 2 assists in Tottenham's home win over Crystal Palace. He scored against Villa as well in that 4-0 win. Timo Werner also notched. Johnson has been quietly effective, actually, for Spurs this season. He's got 7 assists now and 4 goals, which is pretty decent. So if Richarlison remains out, he could be another option as a 1 week punt. Yuri Tielemans of Aston Villa could be worth a punt as well if you fancy Villa to do the business against West Ham. He, of course, remains very low owned in draft, although perhaps there's a reason for that. However, on his day, we all know he can leather a ball in from 30 yards. I just wouldn't bet on it. Now, obviously, if the likes of Paqueta or Kudos or Bailey or Kulusevski are free, then go for them. You don't need me to tell you that, but I am assuming that the better players are already taken in your league. So what we're doing here is really looking to unearth an extremely rough diamond. And with that in mind, let's move to the forward positions where I'm afraid it is extremely slim pickings. Chris Wood returned to the Forest team for their game against Brighton. He was actually in fine form before his injury layoff. He'd got 4 goals in 5 games. Divock Origi seems to have won the trust of Nuno Espirito Santo, having started the last 2. Forest are up against an extremely leaky Luton side, so either of those could help you bag some points. And Curtis Woodrow came off the bench to score the equaliser for Luton at Crystal Palace. So like Andros Townsend, he is very much a watch and wait. Let's see if there's any clue from Rob Edwards as to whether either will start in Luton's game against Nottingham Forest. And Danny Ings and Michail Antonio are 2 other strikers to keep an eye on with West Ham in Europe on Thursday, because any injuries from that one to the likes of Jared Bowen, Kudos or Paqueta, and either Ings or Antonio, or maybe even both, could get a run out against Aston Villa. The pair combined for that equalising goal on Sunday as West Ham rescued a point against Burnley. So, as I said last week, when there is a game week with so few fixtures, draft managers have got big decisions to make. And each manager's situation will, of course, be very different. So look at your league, look at the points tallies of your rivals, look at your opponent's side if it's a head-to-head league, and work out what you need to do to give yourself a chance of getting that win. If you need to make radical changes and sacrifice long-term players for a short-term gamble, please don't do it. But if you have players you are happy to unload, hopefully some of the names we've mentioned today are now firmly on your radar and can help make Game Week 29 a successful one. Okay, after Game Week 29, it is the FA Cup and then an international break, which means there is now no Premier League football until Saturday, March the 30th. However, there are lots of players rumoured to be returning for that game week. So if you want to take a little bit more of a long-term view, then this could be the section for you. There are players left, right and centre who could still make a big impact between now and the end of the campaign and who are back in full training or close to it. So hopefully a lot of these will still be available on the waivers in your league. We're going to basically go through team by team now and just highlight some of those players who might be able to strengthen your squad. And starting with Arsenal, Jurrien Timber is close to a return. He limped off against Nottingham Forest on the opening day after a brilliant pre-season, but he is now close to a comeback. Arsenal go to Manchester City in Game Week 30, which, let's face it, is not ideal. It's possible he will make the bench for that one. He probably won't be involved, though. However, after that, the Gunners have Luton at home and Brighton away, when you would expect him to get some minutes. Tommy Asso is also close to a return, although he's probably fallen down the pecking order now, given the form of Jakob Kivior. At Aston Villa, Jacob Ramsey will have 2 weeks to sort that gammy foot of his out. He was just starting to find his form again before limping off against Luton. Whether you want to risk bringing him in again, given this consistent injury curse that he seems to have, well, that's up to you. I've gambled on him 2 or 3 times this season now, and that is me done. I'm not going there anymore. Marco Senesi is expected to return to Bournemouth's team in time for their Game Week 30 fixture at home to Everton, a side who cannot score at all right now. I know we're all feeling pretty down on Bournemouth right now, but their fixtures are still quite appealing. He could be fit for that Everton game, and then after that they have another home game against Crystal Palace, and then they go to Luton. So some really tempting fixtures still, if you can bear to gamble on Bournemouth one more time. Bryan Mbeumo should be good to go for Brentford after the international break if he's not ready for Game Week 29. And his teammate Ethan Pinnock is also nearing a return as well. And at Brighton, João Pedro has a return penciled for Game Week 30. How Brighton have missed his firepower up front. Could he be the man to get them firing a gain. Christopher Nkunku could be back for Chelsea in time for game week 30. They take on Burnley at Stamford Bridge, a very tempting fixture if you think Nkunku will play and can stay fit for longer than 30 seconds. And at Crystal Palace, Michael Olise has returned to light training, and Oliver Glasner has said he expects him to be available by April. Now, obviously, we don't know if he means the start of April or mid-April or the end of April or April 2029, but those 2 weeks without Premier League football should hopefully reveal to us a little bit more about Michael Olise's chances of making game week 30. At Liverpool, it's pretty unlikely that anyone has been daft enough to waver out the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, but he should be back for game week 30 alongside Alisson in goal. And at Luton, Elijah Adebayo could be set for a return as well. Jack Grealish is in contention for Manchester City. If you believe the reports, he's been struggling with a groin injury since game week 24, but he is almost ready to return to first team action. You would imagine his minutes will be limited though, and that could still put you off bringing him in. Rasmus Højlund is expected to be back for Manchester United, although like Trent Alexander-Arnold, I can't see many people ditching him on the waivers. Harry Maguire is also expected to be fit for game week 30 though, and I can very much see him being available in a lot of leagues if you want a slice of slabhead. At Newcastle, Nick Pope is close to a return for the Toon. He's been out since game week 15 with a shoulder injury, and his absence has coincided with a terrible run of defensive form for Newcastle. However, if you're short of a goalkeeper and you think Pope can shore things up at the back, then now might be the time to get him in. Richarlison is expected back for Spurs in game week 30, having missed the last couple of matches. Who knows if he's going to win his place in the starting 11 back? Who knows if it will be up front? But he is likely to get a lot of minutes one way or another between now and the end of the season. And at Wolverhampton Wanderers, Cunha is expected to return from a hamstring injury. So if you are short of a top quality striker, now is the time to get him in while you can. So that is a slightly more long-term view for those managers that are perhaps prepared to write off Game Week 29 and future-proof their sides for the remaining game weeks. And that is almost it for today. Game Week 29 starts on Saturday the 16th of March at 3 p.m. GMT. The deadline for your waivers is Friday the 15th of March at 1:30 p.m. GMT, so make sure you set those waivers in good time. We'll be back next week with a look back at the key stories from the game week, more waiver suggestions, more heroes, more villains, more everything really. And in the meantime, please do not forget to subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you use. Tell your friends about us, tell your family about us, tell anyone with a pulse about us if you can, and please also give us a review if you can spare the time too. That would be fantastic. It will help us in terms of promotion, it will help other managers to find us too, it will help with the algorithms. What are algorithms? I have absolutely no idea, but apparently you need help with them. You can also give us a follow on social media if you like. We're at FPL Draft Zone on X and at FPL Draft Zone on Instagram. Send us any questions, any conundrums, anything you like really, and until next time, good luck with all things draft, and bye for now.